Hi there, it's Kit, and as some of you may know, one of my favorite companies is Nintendo. Well, at least when it comes to making games and consoles. Not so much when it comes to taking down fan games. With one of the things they made being a defining part of my childhood, and that was the Nintendo DS and 3DS. While it was not my first Nintendo handheld by any means, it was the one I spent the most time with games like Kirby Superstar Ultra and Pokemon Heart Gold taking up most of my playtime on the thing. There was one thing that came and went in my childhood that I didn't get too much time with, and that was the DSi. The DSi was a weird in-between handheld console that came out in between the DS and the 3DS. It boasted a lot of cool features like a camera, internet access, and even its own online store with games on it, like Cave Story. But we're not here to talk about Cave Story. Instead, we're here to talk about a cool little software they made for the DSi and its follow-up on the 3DS. This is Flipnotes, an animation software made for the DSi. It was rather simple with the fact that it was for the DSi, so it can't do all that cool stuff that Flash or, well, other softwares can do nowadays. But it was a program meant for one thing, frame-by-frame animation, which is pretty good. With the biggest downside being there was only 4 colors, black, white, red, and blue. But despite these limitations, people found ways to make amazing animations with it. And some people still use the software to this day, mainly being seen in short style content. So why not take a trip down memory lane with me, as we look back at some nostalgic flip notes and some of my favorite creators of the time era. Now back in the early days of Flipnotes Antenna, there was only really one way to find creators and animations, and that was through their online service Flipnotes Antenna, which was an online service where animators could share their works such as animations or other stuff too. They even had a website that you could access to watch content on there without having to go on your DSi. With it overall being a really nice experience, with a lot of content on there being stuff similar to this.
Take a look in the kitchen. You can't find them. Your chips are no more. There's no Fritos, no more Twinkies, just some crumbs on the floor.
This is Food Criminal, one of the most classic and well-recognized flip notes of the era, and personally one of my favorites. The thing that defines it and kind of makes it iconic was the use of Mario sprites. Back in the day, Flipnotes users used to make sprite sheets to upload for other users to use. When I was a kid, I never figured out how to use these things properly, but as shown here, you can see that these are very well used in a lot of these animations. But when I got into Flipnotes, the website was sadly not up anymore, and neither were the DSi servers. Instead, most of these were posted to, well, YouTube, with YouTube being one of the best sites for archiving a lot of the old Flipnotes. And because of that, you can end up discovering some crazy hidden gems. Like this next Flipnote is a huge hidden gem. Well, not really, it was actually relatively popular, but it's one of the coolest ones from back in that era.
La 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 I will never be afraid again. I will keep on fighting till the end. I can walk on water, I can fly. I will keep on fighting till I die. I will never be afraid again. I will keep on fighting till the end. I can walk on water, I can fly. I will keep on fighting till I die.
Now that was the I Can Walk on Water, I Can Fly flip note, which is based on the song by the same name by Bass Hunter. And to be honest, it's still one of the coolest flip notes I've ever seen. And I just had to show it in its entirety to just emphasize how cool it was for me as a kid. Unlike everything else, which I'll mostly not be showing in their entireties for respect for the creators. Sadly, flip notes like this and a lot of others of the time era were very much one-off, with them not really getting too much popularity for the creators outside of this one flip note. With another one that's kind of in a similar range that I really like being this one, the September animation. This is an animation made for the My Little Pony fandom to their song September made by the Living Tombstone. The whole premise of the song is kind of like a weird post-apocalyptic thing of a guy kind of recounting what happened and then realizing he was the cause of the entire apocalypse. That's kind of dark for a My Little Pony song. Not that the fandoms never delved into topics that were dark, but this is especially dark. It goes through the whole music video and it can be found on YouTube, so please check it out if you can. But this shows that flip notes back in the day were mainly music videos, with a lot of other content being like skits and stuff being handled by bigger creators. So why don't we look into certain creators to show how these things kind of work. This is Stupid Mario Brothers, a Flipnote studio series by Anthony W. And this series follows Mario and, well, Luigi and the random adventures they go on with other characters from, well, a lot of other series showing up, like Ash Ketchum, Link, and Ness, being some of the more prominent characters in the series. The series starts out with the voices being high-pitched and sped up, which was something of the era, to say the least. A lot of Flipnotes would do this if they did their own little shorts, is where they'll speed up the voices and make them almost chipmunk-like. Eventually, though, they dropped this later in the series, with making a whole episode to make fun of that fact, that now their voices are normal. Over the course of the series, they actually followed an overarching plot, with the main villain. While most of the series had humor in it, despite the overarching plot being kinda serious, a lot of the humor was more of the LOL XD random style humor of the time, since it was still the early 2010s. A lot of the series is actually still up on YouTube, outside of episode 5 that is, but most of the series is up on YouTube in a big long supercut that's about 48 minutes, so it's a bit of a lengthy watch for a Flipnotes thing. And fun fact about this, for some who already know, is that the entire thing's a recreation of Stupid Mario Brothers by Rich Alvarez, which is a YouTube live action series that follows the exact same plotline. I didn't watch the series growing up, funnily enough. The way I experienced this series was through the Flipnotes version, and I still technically haven't watched the original all the way through. Maybe one day I'll watch it all and make a video about it. But for now, I think I still prefer the old, more digestible Flipnotes version. That's enough of that series. How about we talk about another big user, known as Gizmo. This is Gizmo. Most people probably know them from this animation. Yeah, the one with the little Boo character to Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. That was made by Gizmo, a well-known Flipnotes creator who was known for, well, making music video style animations and skits, with their big defining thing being a Boo character known as Giz. Glad that with the way it's spelled that is pronounced Giz instead of the other thing. Most of Gizmo's stuff is really well animated and very fluid, but also has a snappiness to it that I just can't really explain. But it's very appealing on my eyes. And especially for the time, they made some crazy good stuff. With, well, the most popular being the one I just showed earlier, the Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger one. I mean, if you look up Flipnotes on YouTube, a compilation with that very Flipnote being the thumbnail is one of the first things you'll see. Sadly, it's not know what they're up to nowadays, but wherever they're at, I hope they're still making some pretty cool and awesome stuff. I never watched too much of them growing up myself, so that's why I only focused on the one Flipnote. But this next Flipnotes user, I definitely watched a lot more. This is kekeflipnote. I hope I'm saying that right. A very popular Flipnotes user who's known for their unique style of Flipnotes, with a lot of them having these cute little bouncy creatures. Some of them being birds, some of them being foxes, and some of them just being Animal Crossing characters, weirdly enough. A thing that was very unique about this user is that they've been around for a very long time. They've been making Flipnotes since the early days, but they also still make Flipnotes in the modern day, with a lot of them being, well, some of the stuff I've just shown on screen. But a lot of their earlier stuff were surprisingly about Nintendo characters, and they were more style accurate to what they look like in the games, which was very interesting to me because I didn't see a lot of their stuff growing up until, well, later when they're making more of this. A fun fact about kekeflipnote that you might not have known is that they ended up making a thing for kekeflipnote, which, that anime is just something else to say the least. But it's still really cool to see that they got work outside of the Flipnote sphere. I'd highly recommend checking their stuff out if you haven't before. It's just very appealing, with a lot of their animations having almost a therapeutic vibe to it. But you may have noticed, a lot of these Flipnotes they're making and I'm showing of theirs are a lot more colorful than, well, everything else I've shown. And that's because they're using a software known as Flipnotes 3D, the successor to Flipnotes. And I think now is the perfect time to bring it up. Flipnotes 3D was a sequel software to the original Flipnotes made for, well, the 3DS. When it was first announced, it was March of 2013, with a slotted release date in August later that year. That release date did not happen. Well, for Americans anyways. In Japan, it came out in July, and despite them saying it was going to come out in August, it never did come out in August for Americans, and that was because what Nintendo says were due to unexpectedly high server usage, whatever that could mean. Now, most people don't believe this is the true reason. I think one of the reasons I've seen people say is probably because people are uploading porn to it, which is really gross, now I think about it. But that's all speculation at the end of the day. Software, though, was a huge upgrade from the original, giving users more colors to work around with green and yellow being new additions, but also adding a layer system that has even more layers. I used to mess around with the software a lot more than the original all the time, and it's a really fun one to use. It's just I'm not great at working with small screens. But the only huge downside to the American version is that it lacked the, well, online features of the Japanese version. You see, the way they released it back in the day was not through the eShop. Instead, they released it through Club Nintendo, where if you redeemed enough points through a special program, you could get Flipnotes 3D. This was a really dumb method, but kid me jumped at the opportunity to get it and begged my mom to help me make a Club Nintendo account. But despite all of its upsides and advantages over the original software, weirdly enough, I don't see Flipnotes 3D be used all that often. Outside of Keke, most modern Flipnotes users I see use DSIs with the original software. So I always wonder, are there users with it? Let me know down in the comments below. But I think that's enough talking about Flipnotes 3D. Let's take our final stop with one last user. Well, technically two is a better way of putting it. So this last Flipnotes user I'll be talking about is actually a duo of brothers as it says on the wiki. This is epicguitar, a duo mainly centered around making Pokemon Flipnotes, with OCs representing themselves as Pokemon. A lot of their stuff could range from music videos or just skits between the two of them. The way we knew which one was Epic was the Charizard, and Guitar was the Zangoose. And those two were a pinnacle of my childhood. A lot of the animations and stuff I saw they made really appealed to me, and I wanted to be just like them making animations, with one of my favorite animations they made being the Americano animation. It's one I still go back to almost on a monthly basis. Like, every couple of months, you will at least catch me watching one of their animations. With some of my other favorites being like the Riddle and the How to Make Anime one. Though they never really transitioned to the Flipnotes 3D era, they did make one last Flipnote. And I think it was just called The Last Flipnote, funnily enough. It was a Flipnote with the movie trailer style thing going on, where it was for a series they were working on known as Machine. They eventually moved on and went to do other things like a gaming channel and other channels, but most of them are inactive now. The best that you can see nowadays is that Guitar still makes stuff mainly on Twitter under a new pseudonym known as Potoo Brigham. I hope I said that right. But they still make amazing art and animations, mostly on their own. Epic's whereabouts are mostly unknown, with the biggest thing I could find being someone speculating about who they are currently on a forum site. I'm just hoping that maybe one day, I'll be able to make stuff as good as them. A lot of their Flipnotes inspired me with how fluid they were, and just how fun the stuff they made was. It felt like people just creating for the sake of creating, rather than creating for an algorithm. And with that, I think this ends our trip through nostalgia. As you can see, Flipnotes was definitely a bygone era, to say the least. It showed off that sometimes on the internet, you don't need to make something for an algorithm or for money or for clout to make something cool. You just have to make something you're passionate about. And that's what I like to do. And seeing all these Flipnotes animators again has given me hopes that maybe, hopefully, even just this very short coverage of them will get you, right there, you right there, you watching this video, a little bit of interest in doing something yourself. Or at least watching some of this content and experiencing some of this nostalgia. And if you're new to it, I hope it gave you a newfound interest in some of this. But, well, I got some shelf restocking to do, so hopefully I'll see you again.